Before we move on to the next lecture, I just want to compare the var and let keyword again quickly. I want to drive this point home, and it will help you with coding, I promise. Let's define a age of 2. And remember, when I do this with the var keyword, I'm creating a global scope variable. Now, this is what I want to do. If the warthog is older than 1 year old, I want to console log to the screen the equivalent human years of that warthog. What do I mean? Well, a warthog lives for about 18 years. And if we just say a human lives 100 years, I know that's too long, but let's just say the average human lives 100 years. What that means is that for every 1 warthog year, it's the equivalent of 4.72 human years. And I just want to console log that to the screen. So let's say age is greater than 1, because we only want to do this if the warthog's older than 1 year. And now I want to create a variable which is the human age equivalent, which we said is just going to be the age of the warthog multiplied by 100, if we take that as the average lifespan of a human, divided by 18, which is the average lifespan of a warthog. And then we want to console log to the screen, and here I'm going to be using template literals, a 2-year warthog is years old in human terms. And this is what's nice about Quokka. You can see that the output is immediately being displayed to the right in blue. And this is what I want to get to now, comparing var versus let. Remember, we said var is only function scoped. So if I try and access human age, what do you think will happen here? Human age. Well, this is not a function, is it? It's just block. It's not a function. So I would expect human age to be visible everywhere with the var keyword. Human age. And it is. We can see the output results to the screen. But what about if I change this var to a let? Well, let is block scoped. So I'd expect human age to not be defined. We are unable to use it outside that block. But you already knew this, didn't you? So let's step it up a notch. Let's try and create a nested block. And then let's see what happens. So let's delete this. Let's create a function called variable scope. For lack of a better word, you can call it anything you want. And straight off the bat, let's define a variable called x. And let's make that a number. Now what I want to do is create a nested block. We'll do a simple if statement that will execute because we're just passing the boolean true. And if it is true, I want to create a variable. But get this, I want the variable name to be the same x. And let's say that must be Wally. This is a string. So you can already see that we've got 2 variables now that shouldn't technically be allowed if they were in the same scope. One's a number, one's a string. But let's see what happens. All I want to do now is console log x within this block. Now I want to exit the block and I want to console log x again. And the last thing I want to do is console log x again. But let me just stop Quokka for the moment because I want you to think about the result here. Console log x. And here's my question to you. And I'll only give you the answer in a few seconds. So I want you to pause the video and think about it. We've got 3 console logs on the screen. What will the result of each of those logs be? Think about scopes. Think about block scopes. Think about function scopes. Pause the video now, give it a go, and then I'll answer the question shortly. I hope you gave that a go. I hope you had fun. I hope you're enjoying it. And don't be intimidated by this all. I mean, it's fun, and if you don't know the answers, that's totally fine. That's why we're doing the course together. Okay, so before I start up Quokka, let's just run through it. We've got a function, and remember, the let variable is function scoped. That means that any variable defined within that function is not accessible outside that function. That's the first thing I want you to think about. So this console log x, is that in the function or out the function? It's out the function. So when the parser comes through and it looks at that x, is it going to find anything? No, it's not, because that x is not found in the global scope. So I would expect this last console log to display undefined. What about the first console log? Well, remember we said that the let variable is block scoped. That means you can treat that if block as its own section of code, and only that section can access that variable. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've defined x within that scope, and then we've console logged x. So I'd expect the x to be Wally. Now, let's go on to the middle console log. We've jumped out of that if block. So which block are we in? Well, we're in the function block again. And that means we've defined x as 10, and now we're console logging 10. I would expect the result 10. Let's see if this works. Let me activate Quokka. Just give it a moment. So you can see Quokka's already saying that x is not defined out here, which is what we expected. The reason why we're not seeing anything executed here is we haven't run the function. And remember, to run a function, we have to call the name and enclose it in brackets. There you go. And it's literally given us what we would expect. Hope it's starting to feel intuitive. Let's continue.